Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head up to Norway once again, and we're going to revisit a brewery who I've really been getting back into recently. These guys are one of the better known names when it comes to Norwegian craft beer, but I think we have quite an exciting beer to try from them today, so a very good one for review number 2100. For this review then we're going to go to Stavanger in southwestern Norway, and we're going to revisit the wonderful Lervig Aktiebryggeri. So this one that we're having today is the Paragon, which is a barley wine coming in at 13.5% ABV, and Lervig say that this is the most special beer that they do, and that really just kind of piqued my interest actually. And you know, the other thing was I hadn't had a barley wine in quite a while, but as I mentioned in the Popels review a couple of videos back, I've ended up with about 3 or 4 barley wines at one time, having not had one in about 2 or 3 months actually. So that's just kind of what happens, you know, the craft beer thing seems to go through troughs and peaks, if you like. But really curious to see how this one turns out. I've had some excellent beers from Lervig recently. We're getting more and more of them down here in Sweden now. This one came through the Tillfälligt sortiment in Systembolaget on the 13th of March 2020. And I was in two minds about this when I first saw it, because it was 150 crowns, so that's about 15 euros or like £12 or something like that. So it's a pretty pricey beer, this one. But you know, knowing Lervig, and I checked out the ratings and stuff that this one had, and you know, the process and things that goes on to actually brew it, I kind of just thought I fancied a treat, so I bought this one, and here we are reviewing it for review number 2100. So as I always do with these milestone reviews, a huge thank you to you guys, for the fans, for all the support you've given me over the last, what is it now, 6 3/4 years. Yeah, 6 3/4 years now. It's insane, isn't it? But yeah, huge thank you to you guys for all the support, and long may this continue. I don't have any plans to stop this ever, basically. I'll do this until I drop dead. But yeah, really looking forward to trying this one, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer. I'm very curious to see what this has in store for us. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Lervig Aktiebryggeri before. This must be review number 7 or 8 that I've done from this brewery, and there will be more in the future, no doubt. There's all the usual social media down there too. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Norwegian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, which is becoming more regular these days, thankfully. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review, especially if you're watching in Norway. It would really be cool to hear a little bit more about some of the smaller and more quirky breweries, because we mainly get Amundsen, Servicium, Handbryggeriet, and of course Lervig. Those are the main ones that we tend to get down here, but I'd love to review some of the smaller breweries a little bit more regularly as well. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. On to my brewery notes. So Lervig Aktiebryggeri, as I've mentioned to you before, are based in Stavanger in southwestern Norway, and the company was founded back in 2003 after the Tohu brewery was sold to Carlsberg and they moved production to Oslo. For a while the Lervig Aktiebryggeri beers were brewed at Ølbryggeri in Tromsø, which is away up in the north of Norway, but production was moved down to Hillevåg in Stavanger back in 2005. So the head brewer for Lervig is Mike Murphy, and he's been there since 2010, and prior to this the brewery were just making many light lager beers, but when Mike came in, he moved them towards making American-style beers. And pardon me, Mike apparently had played quite an important role in the Danish craft beer scene, so he collaborated with a lot of the well-known brewers down there, such as Mikkel and Jeppe Bjerg. So Sean Hill from Hill Farmstead over in America, although he wasn't there at the time, and also Andreas Kiesmeyer as well. But he also worked for Birra del Borgo in Italy for a period, but now he owns 5% of Lervig Aktiebryggeri, so he'll be there for the foreseeable future, I'm sure. But the CEO of the company is Anders Kleistrup, and the main owner, and he was the main owner of the brewery was Christopher Stensrud, who owned 67% of the shares. But in 2018, Orkita Capital, who also own part of Mikkeller, bought a 50% share in the company, and they're helping them to expand and build up their infrastructure and get their beers out there a little bit more. But they're apparently hoping to open up a new facility called Ulhelene in Stavanger at some point as well. Basically the beer hall. But apparently the site that it's on, there's some kind of deal being hashed out with the local authority, because they had plans to use that site as well. But these days they export around 1/3 of their beer, and in total this brewery now exports 17% of all the exported beer from Norway, from what I understand. And as of March 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, they produced 150 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So yeah, a really nice brewery, this one. You saw me review the Supersonic a couple of videos back, and that was a beautiful New England hazy style IPA. But Lervig always have some very, very nice stuff, and I always try to make the effort to review their beers when they come through the Tilfeldig assortment and Systembolaget. But we do seem to be getting some of them now as part of the local and Småskaligt as well, which is always a positive. So yeah, lots of Norwegian beers to look forward to in Sweden over the next little while, which is always a positive thing. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about Lervig Aktiebryggeri. If you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer and Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all of those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself then. So I did write down a little bit about how they make this beer, because it's a little bit unusual from what I gather. So this beer itself, it's 13.5%, a barley wine as I mentioned at the start of the video, and it's hopped with Styrian Goldings, and it's got a malt base of chocolate, caramel, and I believe it was Munich malts, and it's just an ale yeast strain that this one uses. But apparently this is brewed using a double boil technique, where they basically boil away the water to concentrate the sugars before adding more water back into the boil, and this is done twice. But apparently this allows better Maillard reactions, and this is a reaction that you get between amino acids and reducing sugars, and food that basically is seared, like steak and things like that. This is a technique that these are Maillard reactions that are going on there, and it gives you that kind of brown sweetness, if you like. It promotes caramelization apparently, and they say that it's very good for the barrel aging side of this as well. So this one has been aged in bourbon barrels as well for 12 months, I should say too. So yeah, this one I think will be an absolute monster of a beer. It's nice to hear about Maillard reactions again. I've not done that since my organic chemistry days. That would have been, was that 3rd or 4th year of my master degree? I forget actually. Yeah, it was. It's been a long time since I've heard about Maillard reactions, but they're really quite interesting actually. I wish they'd let us do more food chemistry actually. We didn't get to learn all about fruity esters and stuff like that, but maybe that's something I can look at in the future. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about the beer itself, to be honest with you. Just look at the artwork on this. So I think basically if my head doesn't explode in this review, then you guys need to contact them and be like, yeah, he needs his money back, or he needs a case of this beer, you know. But yeah, I like the artwork on this one. I think I probably will be keeping this bottle, because as I say, this one is supposed to be a little bit special. It said on the website that you could age this one for 10 years, but you know, if it's been aged in bourbon barrels for 12 months already, you know, I'm just kind of like, well, you know, I'm just really keen to try it. But actually, I just noticed, I think I said this was the 2019 vintage at the start of the video. It says here it's the 2018 vintage. I'm sure it said on Systembolaget it was the 2019 vintage. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. This one, I think, regardless, it will be really quite good actually. So without further ado, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting. And I just need to figure out how to actually open the thing if it doesn't want to explode. There we go. Nearly made my hands spasm doing that. Oh well, fun times, eh? But yeah, there we go, out and open. Let's get this guy out and into the glass. Oh, look at that. The thing I'm curious about with this beer is whether it's going to be an American barley wine, an English barley wine, or just something completely different. But that is definitely one of the most dark, one of the darkest barley wines I've ever come across. That's insane, that. Look at this. and you can really smell how caramelised and infused those brown sugary notes are in this beer. Let's get rid of the brewery notes now. So yeah, look at that. That is an absolute monster of a beer. If I put the light through that, it's a really dark sort of ebony rosewood colour. I mean, it's not far off the colour of a stout, but that kind of shows you, I mean, when it comes to barley wines and stuff, barley wines have very, very long boils. And the amount of caramelisation you get from the sugars, as well as the type of malts that are used in a beer, they determine the colour. Now, this one does have a bit of chocolate malt in it, apparently, so that will affect it to some degree. That will make the beer darker. But, you know, as I say, barley wines have very, very long boils, like sometimes 4 to 5 hours, from what I gather. Now, if this one has basically been double boiled, maybe we're talking about 8 hours in total. So, yeah, you have some extremely crazy level caramelisation in this one. So yeah, it's not surprising with this appearance. There is a wee bit of light comes through it, but I would say this is it's basically a Coca-Cola, Pepsi type colour. It really is insane that. I don't think I've ever come across a barley wine that is quite as dark as that. You can see there was about a solid quarter finger of a frothy, beigey kind of tan head on this one, but that's faded away to just be a very thin sort of foamy layer. There's 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and a few little ones just heading up towards the bottom of the head there. But I mean, overall, it is a bit surprising, this one, just because of how dark it is. But you know, you can get barley wines like this. The one that comes to mind perhaps is the Thomas Hardy that I reviewed maybe about a year and a bit ago now, the Thomas Hardy ale. So yeah, that one was pretty damn interesting. So yeah, this one looks as if it will be a bit of a monster, let's just say that. So let's take a look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. Oh jeez, yeah. Straight away with this one. It smells lovely, but Jesus, this thing is boozy. It's got a beautiful aroma to it. I mean, you can really smell that lovely kind of bourbon barrel aging to it. I mean, as a Scot, compared to Scotch whisky, I've always found that American bourbon comes across as very brown sugary, and I've always been in two minds about whether barrel aging is sort of necessary, if you like. I've never quite landed on a position on this as to whether I think it makes the beer better or whether it's not needed. I mean, to be honest, I can take it or leave it, and if the beer's good and it's barrel aged, brilliant. If it's not barrel aged and it's still good, well, awesome, because you do get a bit of a thinner mouthfeel, and with some beers I do prefer a slightly kind of thicker mouthfeel actually. I think I've found that with some of the barrel aged versions of the Omnipollo beers with the flavour essences and stuff. So I think that was really what kind of was sort of tearing my opinion a little bit, to be honest. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is absolutely mental. So straight away you get those big woody bourbon barley notes out of this. You can really smell that sort of brown sugary bourbon type quality. That forms the base pin of the beer. The brown sugars in this are very treacly and very molasses like. There's not really any kind of sweet caramel edge to it, apart from maybe a little touch at the front of the nose, and you do get a wee bit of biscuit out of it maybe. Yeah, there's maybe there's not really even a leathery or tobacco-y type note to this beer. Although in fairness, now that I say tobacco, maybe I think there maybe is actually. There maybe is a wee touch of a kind of tobacco type note from this beer. But it really, it comes across as almost a little touch like well fired. It's almost got a little touch of a kind of roasty, toasty type thing. And it's not a sweet roasty toastiness from the brown sugars. It's almost got something else in it. But yeah, you can smell a wee bit of the chocolate in there, but I think it really is more about the brown sugar. I've always found that a barley wine is more about the kind of brown sugary notes, but the stuff that you get out of this is absolutely lovely. As I say, a base of that bourbon barrel wood in there, and there's not really any kind of oaky vanilla notes out of it either. The bourbon barrel wood almost comes across as being a little bit charred, but on top of that you get those really highly caramelised brown sugars, the big treacly molasses notes. They come across as a little bit well fired, almost a little bit black, to be honest with you. There's maybe a wee bit of sweet caramel and biscuit at the front of the nose, and there's a wee bit of an almost tobacco-y type sweetness to the aroma of this beer as well. On the hoppy side of things, you know, you can pick up a wee bit of grassiness and a wee bit of of earthiness there. But I mean, if this is the 2018 vintage and it's this is the 2018 vintage and it's, how do you say, if it's been barrel aged as well, most of the hoppy character is going to have gone, so you will just get a little bit of grassiness and a wee touch of earthiness as well. Actually, that's all you're really going to get out of it, to be honest. So yeah, on the fruity side of things then, there's a nice there's a big sort of there's almost a kind of cakey note to this beer, like a kind of I don't know if it's right to say a chocolate fruit cake, like a kind of, it's like a bramble fruit cake, something like that. It's got some lovely berryish notes, this beer. There's definitely some kind of plums in there, figs, dates, raisins. It's got all of this sort of kind of dried, cakey, sultana-y type fruit to it as well. Yeah, it does really smell a bit like sultanas, but yeah, plums, dates, figs. I'm not sure if it's really got a raisiny sharpness. It's juicy plums and things that I'm getting out of this one. Prunes maybe as well, actually. But yeah, you definitely get a little bit of that kind of blackberry-ish, blackcurranty quality coming out of this one the further that you go into the aftertaste. And it's interesting, like I say, because this one has Styrian Goldings in it, a Slovenian hop, and when it's come to, you know, I never thought about using that in barley wines and all of these kind of things, because it is a really nice hop for like Helles lagers and stuff like that. But usually I would have always thought it would be Northern Brewer from Germany that you would use for this kind of thing. I would never have thought of using the Styrian Golding from Slovenia, actually, so that's something I need to remember going forward. But as I always say, take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. This one is just a big, massive ball of brown sugar with some lovely fruity notes into it. So yeah, take a bit of time and appreciate that before you get stuck into the beer. But let's have a taste of this one then. This one is the Paragon, a barley wine coming in at 13.5% from Lervig Aktiebryggeri in Stavanger in the southwest of Norway. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål. That is a really, really special beer. Yeah, that's really nice. I mean, if you think of, you know, Thomas Hardy gets a lot of hype and things. You know, the Thomas Hardy, I think, probably is one of the best known barley wines in the craft beer world, along with the likes of Bigfoot and stuff from Sierra Nevada. But this is quite different to all the ones I've had recently. I mean, the most recent barley wine I reviewed before the Poples one a few videos back, the most recent one I think was the smoke barley wine that I had from Tempest Brewery back home, Double Denim. Although you know, it's debatable whether that was a barley wine or not. I think it was, but it was really more smoky rather than anything else. But this beer is just this is just something else. This is insane. So big thumbs up to Lervig Aktiebryggeri for this one. They've done a great job of this. Yeah, that is just absolutely crazy. I like this. It's one of these beers, like on first impressions, it doesn't strike me as being overly complex and the most complex example of the style that I've found, but it's just really, really nicely done, and it just comes across very, very beautifully. I mean, if you think about this, it's only got 3 types of malts in it. It's got 1 hop. It's got one, you know, it's got just 1 type of yeast from what I can gather, and it's all about just getting these sugars caramelised enough. Actually, that's the really interesting thing about this one. I think in terms of its recipe, this is actually a pretty similar, you know, a pretty simple beer, but it's all about the technique and all about the barrel aging and stuff. That's what really makes this one pretty special, actually. So, you know, kudos to Lervig Aktiebryggeri. They've taken a completely different approach to this. If you compare this to, for example, to the Supersonic, which had about 4 or 5 hops in it, from what I remember, and you know, quite a lot of different things in the malt base too. You know, this one, to go down a route of a bit more simplicity, it just shows you, you know, there's a lot of different routes you can take when it comes to craft beer. So yeah, let's talk about the flavour of this one properly then. So straight away, you can feel the middle of your palate. It's just blanketed with that lovely kind of bourbon barley, oaky type quality. It feels like quite a wet oaky type flavour actually, but you can really feel the bourbon just kind of infused into that, and that gives the beer a really interesting base. The overall feel of this beer, it's quite wet and it's quite oily, which is, you know, exactly what you want from the style. If you go to the very centre of your palate, you'll get the big thicker kind of brown sugars there, and you can feel right in the middle of the tongue, that's where the big treacly molasses type notes are coming out of this one. As you move further out from that, it gradually gets a bit more sweeter and a bit more like a sweet caramel, and there's maybe a wee bit of a kind of biscuity quality coming out towards the edge of the palate too. The sort of tobacco-y aromas that I was picking up, they don't really come out in the, pardon me, in the flavour at all. Like I say, this is one of these beers that it doesn't strike me as being overly complex. I just think it's really, you know, it's one of these ones where the flavours are just at the levels, and the flavours are just at the levels where they just really, they almost overwhelm you a little bit, but in a good way, in a very good way. Yeah, I really like this. I think this is really pretty special, I have to say. You know, I can't remember how many barley wines I would have reviewed on the channel for you. You know, it must be somewhere in the region of, it must only be about 20 or 25, something like that. I've really not reviewed all that many of this style, but it's one that I really do like, and as I say, all of a sudden I've ended up with 3 or 4 of them at one time. But this is awesome. I love reviewing this beer style, so it's one that I definitely need to keep more of an eye out for over the next little while. But yeah, that malt base, there is a wee bit of a kind of chocolatey note to it. You can, as you go further into the aftertaste, you do start to get a little bit of the chocolatey notes towards the back of the palate. You can just feel a little bit of that slightly dusty kind of chocolatey quality coming out of this beer. It's maybe a sort of 50-60% cocoa, but that's at the back of the palate, like I said, but that sits on top of the wood. You can feel the woody characters, they sort of dry the beer out a little bit. The middle of your palate does dry out a little bit the further that you go into the aftertaste with this one, so bear that in mind with it. So yeah, just bear that in mind with this beer, definitely. The more and more I drink of this, as I say, the further forward you go in the tongue, it really starts to get a little bit more kind of like a sweet caramel, but the middle of your palate really is big treacle, heavy molasses type flavours. But I like that as you go out from the centre, it gradually gets a wee bit more sweet. You might be forgiven for thinking there's 1 or 2 little nutty undertones to the beer. As you move further forward, if you go to the very centre of your palate and move forward, you will pick out a few sort of nutty undertones, and then behind the fruity part of your palate, on the front tip of your tongue, there is a wee bit of a kind of cakey note to this beer. It's like a kind of brown sponge cake type thing. There really is a lovely bit of that in this beer. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a lovely little bit of earthiness there. It's quite a dark earthiness there too. But as you move further forward along the side of the palate, it smoothens out a little bit, and you know, it smoothens out a little bit, and you get a little bit of a floral quality there, but that's very, very minimal, to be honest with you. And when it's Styrian Goldings, it's not a very high alpha acid hop, so it's not going to give you too much. It's just almost like a light, noble kind of floral quality. Then around the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy. But yeah, behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you get that nice big oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters start to roll out of the beer, and that's where I think this one is most complex. The more that I drink of this beer as well, there is a bit of a dry, roasty, almost black kind of character to this one towards the back of the palate. I really do get a little bit more of a kind of roasty, black malty character toward the back of the palate with this beer as well, which is nice. So yeah, just bear that, keep an eye out for that if you try this one. But the fruity side of things then. So yeah, when you take this beer in, you've got a lovely little touch of raisiny sharpness, but then it quickly becomes more of a kind of plummy, juicy quality. Then that gives way a little bit. You start to get a kind of, you really start to get a bit of a pruny datey sort of thing, and it mixes in with the raisins. It's very, very juicy actually, this one, but then as you move further forward on the tip of the palate and go further into the aftertaste, it starts to have that more kind of figgy, blackberry, blackcurranty type flavour as well. So I mean, this beer, the fruitiness in this beer is absolutely lovely, and the bourbon barrel aging really gives it a very interesting, quite infused backbone actually. So this one, in some ways, the fruitiness is very complex for me, and the sort of cakey notes that it has backing that up are very interesting. But the actual malt base in the back of the beer, and the hoppy side of it too, is very, is actually very sort of, it's very kind of subdued in that way actually. It's very straightforward and very simple, but the way that the flavours complement each other is really nice. So for me, the complexity in this one is in the fruity side of things, and I never thought that, I never really thought that Styrian Goldings could give you that, but then some of it of course will be down to the level and the way that the sugars have been treated in this. When you add different hops into different malt bases, they will behave differently. I mean, look at the way that Simcoe behaves in black IPAs and stuff like this. So yeah, just bear that in mind with this beer actually. This is a really very, very nice one. So yeah, this is awesome. In terms of its flavour, you need to try this one for yourself. This is a very unique barley wine in my mind, just because of the way how simple the malt base is, but the way the backbone, the kind of bourbon barrel-y backbone comes out, and also the way the fruitiness is in there. It really is very, very nice. So big thumbs up to Lervig Aktiebryggeri for this one. Pardon me. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I don't think there's much doubt that this is a full-bodied beer. Yeah, pretty full-bodied. Carbonation is really smooth. The mouthfeel overall is just stupidly oily. But that said, I don't think it's quite the most oily beer that I've come across. It would be interesting to try a non-barrel aged version of this, because as I always say, or as I said previously, barrel aging does take the mouthfeel down a little bit and kind of thins it out almost. So I hate to think how thick this beer would have been in its original form actually. That would be very interesting to see. But yeah, just a big thick oily monster of a beer. But like I said, the malt base of this one and the sort of woody notes, there is a bit of dryness towards the back of the palate. That comes out a little bit further into the aftertaste. The things that really linger there are the dark treacly molasses and some of the juicy fruits at the front of the palate. Those are the things that really linger in this one. It almost becomes a little bit like jammy the further you go into the aftertaste too. But a lovely blend of big fruity flavours in this one, which I really, really like. So yeah, lovely big oily fruity characteristics to this one. A nice bit of smoothness and a little bit of dryness actually from the malt base there. I do notice there is a wee hint of vanilla starts to push its way out of this the further you go into the aftertaste too, but again that's quite minimal. So a lovely kind of backbone to the beer, massive brown sugary sweetness to it, but again it's a very dark toasty sweetness in a lot of ways, smooth hoppiness and some lovely big oily jammy fruits to the beer as well. But overall just a beautiful, beautiful example of the barley wine style, and it just goes to show you don't have to be overly complex with these. 3 malts in the malt base, 1 hop, and then just playing around with the brewing technique actually. So this shows you how many variables you have when it comes to brewing beer actually. So kudos to Lervig Aktiebryggeri for trying something a little bit different. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one is the Paragon, a barley wine ale at 13.5% from Lervig Aktiebryggeri in Stavanger in the southwest of Norway. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Lervig Aktiebryggeri as well. If you're watching from Norway, do let me know some other Norwegian breweries that you guys would like me to check out. I'd love to be able to get a hold of those beers more regularly, so do let me know if there are any kind of mail order places or anything that I could order the Norwegian beers from. That would be awesome. But yeah, definitely cool to have another beer from Lervig, and this one I think was pretty damn special. So yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Lervig Aktiebryggeri, and I will catch you guys very soon. Thank you for your support over the last 2100 beer reviews, and there will be 2100 more to come, I'm sure. Slàinte, skål, cheers.